Hello, and welcome to the season finale of the Weshtern Philosophy Podcast. Two friends with oceans and oceans discussing the unseen forces in our lives through the lens of music, mystery, and craic. This episode is a little bit different. We have tried something new for the season finale in tribute to this quiet and cold and inward time of year. This episode begins with about 20 minutes of silence. It's not quite silence, it is the sounds we make as we get ready for the podcast. It's basically every part of the podcast without the talking. This won't be for everyone, but for those of you that are kind of sitting down at home, we really invite you to turn this on, to sit down and just kind of occupy the space with us. This is the space that gives rise to all of these podcasts we've enjoyed so much. So we invite everyone to sit down and just relax and be with us for 20 minutes. And if that doesn't sound like your thing, no worries at all. Skip to about 20 minutes in the episode and you will hear myself and Bart talking about the topic of silence. Well. When did you get here?
I've been here always.
You've been here for
14 minutes?
Yeah, how long do you think it's been?
14 minutes.
20 minutes.
Huh. Yeah, I just realized I didn't think this through at all. I was going to say we didn't think this through. I didn't think this through. I was like, oh, we'll just sit in the room and be on the couch and with Blarney. But then everything was set up. I was like, oh no, it is a podcast. So we're actually meant to sit down. I was fucking around with Blarney for way too long.
No, you weren't.
But it's funny how I didn't think about it. And then I saw the camera. I was like, oh, fuck. People are going to look at us just going... And I'm not going to look at you for 20 minutes because that's just going to be too tiring.
Well, that's something I found a bit tiring. Fuck you.
No, that has nothing to do with you.
Your face is exhausting.
You know that's not what I meant. I meant like...
Yeah. But it is funny that like... We didn't look at each other much.
No.
And I thought that was unusual. There's no real reason why you shouldn't look at somebody just because you're not talking to them, but it feels wrong. And... We did have the roving mic as well, so all your play with Blarney was picked up.
Oh God,
and that's all part of it because like that's what you do. Like when you come in here first, Blarney says hello to his mate Bart, and there's a wee ball toss.
And usually I do talk to him as well. It was kind of even looking at him in his little basket there, or that's not what you call it. That's in Dutch, basket.
It's a big old basket. It's this bed.
Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah. In Dutch you call it a basket, yeah, it's funny. But he was even kind of looking like, all right, they're here, they're not moving, but they're also not talking. This is a bit odd, it seems.
Something I remembered this morning was that for a while, Katie was getting up every morning and not talking for a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
And Blarney was going nuts. And she had to talk to him. Like, just because he's a dog. It's not even about the content of the speech. Like, he needs you to talk to him. I think speech is a way of connecting with people, even aside from the content, like just directing your speech and your conversation towards somebody is giving them your attention. And he was going nuts. He was jumping up and down and barking at her and going, what is wrong with you? Say something. So.
Yeah, he's just probably worried. Like, imagine if I got up and I didn't talk to my kids without telling them what was going on.
That'd be kind of funny. That could be a good finale for season 3.
Oh, jeez, they would. Oh no, they'd fucking hate it.
Isn't it funny? They'd be very upset, wouldn't they?
Yeah, they'd be But even when I said tiring, I didn't mean anything to do with you. But I was just thinking, actually, when you're not talking to anyone and you cannot explain yourself, and you're only directly connecting energetically. That's just a lot.
That's very
And
tiring.
one of the reasons we did a silent episode, or partially silent episode anyway, is because we're a bit tanked out.
We're tired.
Very fucking tired.
We're very tired.
And just not even, I suppose, well, also physically, God, the kids were up all night last night. But that's not even, that's the part you can usually get past that.
Yeah.
It's more like just a fatigue and more of an acceptance of the seasons, what we talked about so many times. But I really think that's the main thing for me. It's just like, no, this whole season was around the wintering and the autumning and the dying season and the harvest season and all that. And now it's time for that season to end. But I've nothing left to give it nearly. And then, if I was to look at you for 20 minutes, we'd either be giggling or crying, or there'd be something,
or I'd be getting fighty.
Yeah, you probably would want to smack me one. Like, and isn't it funny that talking gives context to our socialization, whereas if it's like raw meeting of energy, and obviously we care for each other and we have positive intention towards each other, but still you're like, what's going on? What is he thinking now? Or what's that? I think
you were throwing the ball for Blarney, and I think you were gesturing to me, and I think you were like asking me like, how's he doing?
Yeah.
And I was trying to say,
he tired?
He's doing great.
Oh, and I didn't get it. Yeah, I didn't get it. I was like, oh no, he's done. Okay, that's funny, isn't it?
And
these guys have great communication, non-verbally. No, I didn't. I really, and even though your signal was quite clear.
Yeah.
But I was just thinking like, I think he's probably tired.
Yeah.
Like normally when you talk as well, you go, do you think this? Because I think this. And that it's you. You're like, no, he's fine. And I was like, I don't know if he's fine. I'll just stop
sure,
now.
And it's interesting that the whole season has been moving into the dark, and we won't spoil it because we might use it for next season, but we had an idea for a finale that was a bit more lively and bombastic, and then that didn't come together, and then we just kind of realized we're tired. It's the new year. It's like the long winter and stuff, and then I had this idea of doing, probably call the episode Silence, but like, I think the point of this is the John Cagean idea of silence, where silence doesn't actually exist.
Yeah.
So the story is that Cage went into this room somewhere which was like perfectly baffled and sealed, and the idea was that no sound should be able to exist in it. He went in there and he closed the door and he heard something.
Yeah.
So people aren't sure exactly what he heard. He might have heard like his own blood pumping around his body or something like that. But he was like, okay, there's no such thing as silence. So this led to the composition, the very famous composition, 4 minutes, 33 seconds, 4:33, which is 4 minutes and 33 seconds of silence, which is, I think, basically the poster child for modernist wankery in terms of compositions. Like, it is hated. Like, it is a really divisive piece of art. But I think people miss the context that at the time, so what happened was, I can't remember the pianist's name, but he hired Carnegie Hall and a very famous pianist, and the pianist came out and it wasn't silence. He sat down in his chair, he lifted the lid of the piano, he placed his hands on the keys, he did nothing, he turned the page, placed the hands back on the keys, shuffled, closed the lid and walked off stage. And so a lot of stuff happened, but no musical notes were played. And I think one of the points is that there's no such thing as silence. One of the points was the reaction that happened, that half of the audience rioted and demanded their money back, which is interesting that silence can lead to such a visceral reaction. But the other thing was that at this time, production techniques and recording techniques were advancing to the stage where you could remove instrument noise. So you could remove the clacking of saxophone keys, and, you know, you could remove the sound of keys on a piano rising and falling, and string noise on guitars and shuffling on chairs. And, you know, I think all of those are part of musical performance, to be honest. If I hear a recording which has all of those removed, I'm like, well, why not just play it all on the keyboard? You know, I want to hear the person playing the instrument as well as the notes. So that was my idea for this episode. One was that in this really quiet, slow, still part of the year, we're going to invite people to just sit down and chill with us for 15, 20 minutes. Yeah. And the second thing was to kind of show people all the stuff that is part of the pod that isn't the talking. Yeah. There was the coffee. There was all that. It's actually a beautiful day as well. It is. It's like everything is frosted white and the sky is blue and the sun is shining. I slipped a good way driving over here. Like, it was, you know, it's that tricky kind of temperature where it's actually fine. Yeah. And then there's just one or two bits that really aren't fine. Yeah. And there was just a turn coming up your way where I just, whoosh, you know, where the rear tires just go. That near the bridge, yeah. Well, the kind of, before the bridge, actually, when you go up high out of Corfin, and there's like a part that's in the shadow. Yeah. And I was really glad there wasn't any other cars, but you just, oh man, you have to be so careful. But it's a beautiful day, actually, for stillness. Yeah, and I'm also thinking about the it's nearly like in Terry Pratchett's Tiffany Aching stories, which I don't think you've read, but it's about a young witch, and she in one or two of the stories she has these moments where she roots so deep into her native soil, which is the clay, which is interesting because it's kind of, it really reminds me of the Burn, because she's like, so she's Tiffany, and he says something about Tiffan being the land under the wave. I actually don't know if that comes from any Gaelic language but it really made me think of the Burn, because their Burn was ocean, and there's so many little fossilized bits that make this sort of landscape, you know, well, sure, we've talked about it many times, but then there's always times like at a climactic points where she
really connects into the land, and she feels everything and is immensely powerful, but is also like, yeah, I can't live here. You can only do this for a tiny little bit. There's a beautiful section that I just read to Yvonne where she's helping a creature dying, and brings him into the desert kind of, and there's just this sense of like, yeah, you can't live like this, shaking hands with death or meeting him anyway, and not shaking hands, I suppose, is going away with him, but like and that's what kind of made me like, that's all very bombastic, but it made me think of like when you remove context, like in what you were saying about that concert, people just go, fuck, what's this chaos? And also when you break down the rules of, like, we're so socialized in a good way as well, like I mean, we could all be tearing each other limb from limb, trying to do each other or be barbarians, but we're all sitting down in a concert hall being polite, but talking is part of that. And when you remove that, it's like, what is this? What's going on? And then and that's suppose the same when you take out speech here. Like, we're very comfortable with each other, but then still you're like, okay, what's this now? What are we doing? Or even what does it sound like? It also made me think of in the was it last week or the week before that we were playing in the Morning Dew, which we will be again in an hour or so. And there was a little boy really rhythmically clicking marbles. And he did it quite beautifully, but he was sitting next to Kieran Fitz on the box. I thought it was the keys of the box. And I was like, I've never heard them so loudly before, but it was nice because it was really rhythmical. But then I saw this little lad just sitting on his grandfather's lap, just going, you know. So it's,
I can't remember exactly what, but I had that experience listening to music as well, where I was listening to something and I was like, I've never heard a guitar make that sound before, and I realized it was actually a percussion instrument locking right in with it. And there's that funny thing where your eyes can deceive you as well, like if you're watching a bunch of people playing music and you think a sound is coming from the right, but it's actually coming from over on the left. I was watching a YouTube video about how Zoom collaborations don't work between musicians because of the speed of light. So literally, if we are seeing, I wish I had the figures, I can't remember them, but like seeing things like for something to visually appear in sync, it has to be within, 10 milliseconds or something. But for something to audibly be in sync, for musicians to be able to react to each other and for the music to sound cohesive, you need it to be like under 10 microseconds or something like that. And literally, if you're collaborating between Europe and America, the speed of light is not fast enough.
Wow, that's cool.
For the musical, for that threshold to
so
be
wasn't
met.
Even the internet connection...
Well, then you add in internet and software processing, but like even the raw speed of light is outside of that threshold.
Oh, that's brilliant.
You know, so there is something about sound where you need to be very proximal, and we are really keyed into sound being slightly wrong, even more so than visuals, you know.
Like I've always thought like I would hate to be, well, impaired in any way, but I would hate to be blind, but I'd probably hate being deaf even more. It's just the silence of it and not connecting with people, talking, and then, I mean, you still connect with people definitely, but not talking to people, and then not being able to hear music. I mean, I suppose you talk with sign language, but I imagine it's very different. But it's interesting that threshold is so that it's such a little. You only have a little bit of give, and I think you really notice it with trad and stuff as well. If the rhythm isn't syncing in a certain way, it just, you kind of go, is this me? Am I? What's? Especially when it's next to invisible, you know, you kind of go. I remember we had a guy sit in one time. I was actually a young fella with spoons, and who just had like a dead center rock and roll beat. I'm like, trad doesn't have that beat, and it just makes it very, you know. You were there, I think, as well. I was in the Morning Dew as well.
Yes, I remember. I think that's the funny thing, is that like I once played with a guitarist that just had perfect pitch and perfect rhythm, and he was a metal guitarist, so he was incredibly competent, and like he would just go and every note was exactly on, like you brought into a DAW and it was exactly the same volume and exactly the, and complete,
but probably
and it made me like itchy. It made me like uncomfortable, I was like, oh, I just want to listen to B.B. King. I just want to listen to somebody bend one note, for 15 seconds, because there was something about that became almost mechanistic for me.
But it's funny that you're saying on the one hand we can't deal with the fallout from it, but then on the other hand we also can't deal with it being too perfect. But that's in another way, I suppose. The expression then becomes stilted if it's... Yeah,
and there's a style of music where God Your Man was the king of it. He was so fucking good, and he can do a lot of things I couldn't do, but for me, because I'm thinking about that fellow with the spoons. I mean, one of the things about trad is that there is actually silence in trad. There is drops in volume, there is drops in dynamic, there is like, let's leave this. I think people always focus on the high bits of trad, like when the set really kicks off.
Yeah.
But that's 15%. The other 85% is like pulling back and building and making sure everyone's on board. And how did you find the 20 minutes of silence, Bart?
Well, it was fine, but it's you kind of just need to occupy yourself. That's I think that the part that's kind of disconcerting about it is that you're like, what are we actually doing? Because we didn't really talk it through.
Oh, that was
and which is kind of funny and maybe good as well. But we just texted like, oh, we'll kind of just be silent when I come in, and good luck, but it's like I'd be very comfortable meditating for an hour, or probably quite comfortable. Like I would take it, it might take you a few minutes to settle in, but then you're like, okay, this is what I'm doing. But then when you're like, well, I don't know if I'm doing that, it's the insecurity, I suppose, is we always crave security, don't we? Like to know what is expected of us. So how did you find it?
I really enjoyed it. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I got really hyper aware of the sounds of my own body. One thing I thought was interesting, we all got really quiet, because like we're calling this silence, but what it actually is like not speaking.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, we can come in. And I was like almost looking for things to be noisy. Like throw the ball, Blarney, squeak the ball and stuff like that. We have a microphone on Blarney, and I wish he was snoring, and he isn't, because he's sleeping in the wrong position. If he was on his side, he'd be snoring.
Oh, yeah. But even him, being so quiet, he isn't that quiet. But it's nearly as if you're honouring the silence then. It's nearly as if silence is the new norm. Where you're like, oh, that's what we're honouring here. Just to come back to what you were saying about music, we were playing a game last night. It's called Hitster, and it's like it sounds so dull, and it's such crack. Like you just get like a heap of little cards with a QR code on them, which actually I don't have too fond memories of the QR code, but still. And you connect it to Spotify, and you just turn it on, and a song comes on Spotify, and you have to place it within time.
Right.
So if you guess the name and the artist, that gives you like a little extra benefit. I won't go into that. But the main thing is you have to make a row of 10 or 15 songs in the right order in terms of years. And but it's so funny because people just respond to music. So we were playing it with a Dutch friend, and she just went mental, and it was brilliant. But at one point I cried laughing because she just like, song comes on, and within half a second she's up to 90 just in terms of raw passion for melancholy and whatever it is, and just about 2% off pitch and about 20% too loud, and it was and I died. There's something like, I think so it's interesting. You just really made me think about what you were saying about music there. I'm like, why is it sometimes like it's horrible when it's perfect, and sometimes horrible when it's imperfect? And in this case, it was just so funny. Like, it's especially, I think, really funny to really go for something and whiff it. There's something really funny about that, but then also not giving a fuck. But
we had a moment at the session last Sunday where we were playing a set of 3 tunes.
Oh, that was great. Yeah.
And then they came around to the 3rd tune, and Sonia couldn't remember it, and we just held on was it an E or something? We knew it was meant to be an E minor, or was it meant to be in D or something? And we just vamped on one chord.
Well, I just at one point just mutely strummed.
Yeah.
Because I was like, whatever you want to do, you can do now.
Yeah, I think that was it. You were like rhythmically strumming, and I was like gently riffing on one or two notes, and and then the percussionist gradually dropped out, and like
it was nearly done. Yeah.
And it was hanging by a thread.
Yeah, and I think I was kind of starting to slow down, and then Molly
remembered the tune, and then it all came back, and it was wonderful because, as I always say, nobody likes a good juggler.
Oh, he says it so.
And there was, because what I loved about that was as close as you could get to everything falling apart. That was literally one more quantum of chaos, and we would have stopped. We went right to the threshold, and then we pulled it back, and the crowd loved it. It
was a real explosion of energy, because it looks nearly like a thread or a yarn just completely unraveling, and then everything flip, because we all know, like, when the tune is there, like, we all know what to do, like, so everything then falls back into place, and then it's everyone was like, way.
I'm all about those moments, and I think you need to make space for those moments as well. Like, that's another type of silence, or another type of space, I suppose you could call it, is that, like, we could have been like, oh, the tune's not there, let's just wrap it up.
Yeah.
But there's an act of faith where you're like, no, I'm not going to allow complete silence. I'm going to keep playing one note. And I'm going to see if this can come out. And the scary thing about creating space is that something has to fill it, right? And I think that's probably why the exercise this morning was tricky, because you create a void, and then our natural inclination is to fill it. And I have to say, I really like the void. I really like the silence. I love those tensions. Like, I was hyper aware of you. I was hyper aware of Blarney this morning. I was hyper aware of the fire. This is a wooden house. It creaks. The table creaks. The gear makes sound. Like, if I cough or sneeze, sometimes the guitars will resonate.
Oh, that happens to me all the time.
And you're like, you feel very connected sonically to everything, whereas our brains prioritize speech, and as soon as we start talking, our brains like volume faders. It like lowers the threshold of everything else. So to be able to raise the faders on all this other sound, because all those sounds we listened to this morning, the first 20 minutes of this episode, they're there all the time.
Yeah. All the time.
And it was just nice to kind of pay homage to them, and as well be like, it's January. And something, Katie was reminding me of this, and it's something I used to always say to my patients as well. Don't fucking start a New Year's resolution in January. Don't do it. No. It's a stupid idea. Wait for the spring.
Yeah, and then...
Why would you be starting anything now?
Then by the time the next winter comes, you'll have a new thing that you're doing, or a new rhythm. A thing that's really coming into me, which you said it very eloquently there, about the faders and how we prioritize certain things. I was so we had a really rough night with the kids, and in the end they both ended up in bed with me, and Yvonne went to sleep in Sammy's bed. And then Sammy he was very restless, and I was just like, and we friends staying over, so I knew they were going to play with the other kid, and it was going to be chaos. And I was like, I just want him to get a bit more sleep, So I kind of just held him tight, but it's always like, where do you put your face that it's not annoying for him, but also like he has long hair that was tickling my nose, and it was like, and then we kind of ended up where I just had my ear kind of next to his neck, or his neck, and then we kind of fell asleep, but I could really hear his heart beating, and it's terrifying. It's like, it's making me a little emotional to think about it. It's like, I love that guy so much, and Jesus, that thing has to keep beating. It's fuck. I can't be listening to that all day. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
It's fucking mental. Like when you stop talking, and when you quieten down, and you're just with people, actually there is so much aliveness.
Yeah.
That it's not nearly disturbing. It's, well, again, to come back to Terry Pratchett, it's that thing of like, aren't humans brilliant that we invented boredom?
Yeah.
Like that it's usually death saying it, that in an infinite galaxy, you just go like, don't know what to do today. Like, fuck, man, everything is happening all around you all the time, but we kind of need it because it's too much otherwise. There's that thing, I think, in Tiffany Aching again where there's that creature, and he says who suffers from endless experience. That's basically the thing. And he just goes like, I heard a kid's song, Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. Imagine like the endless energy and explosion of a star and turning it into something small that you sing for babies. Yeah. It's like, that is amazing. And I think we need it. And that's good to know that as well, because we're so often, we are like, we are overstimulated, like, and with the phones and everything. But then when you turn away from that, like you say, to the void.
Yeah, but there is no void.
No, well, that's the thing, that there is no void. But then also, like what I said about Sammy there, then it makes you realize how precious things are, and sometimes that's just too much. Like, that's an honest and beautiful and loving experience, and I will remember that happened this morning, which also shows, like, on a fucking Friday in January, you could have mind-bending experiences if you just open yourself to it. You don't need to go on the drugs or the drink or whatever. It's all there. Yeah. But also, God, it's a lot. And if you feel deeply, like I think we both do, it's a lot.
It is.
And it's a lot to manage a podcast sometimes when you're both really sensitive. That sounds like we were arguing. We weren't, but more like figuring out how to end a season when you're both wrecked, but still feel an obligation to finish it properly, because it was a brilliant season.
It was
beautiful.
But it was high energy. The guests brought a lot of high energy. I think we felt like we had to keep the high energy going to the end, and then I know it was a relief for me.
Yeah,
when it was like, this feels more appropriate. But going back to Sammy, I have a thought on this. I'm not going to say this is how it is, but it's something I've been thinking of, and with that little heartbeat, And I'm like, I think the scary thing is when you bring the head into the heart, right? Because the head knows that for a heart to beat requires an investment of energy, and there's no such thing as a perpetual motion machine. Yeah. So eventually, the anything that will moves eventually stops. This is what physics and engineering tells us. This is what entropy tells us. The sun will burn out and die. Everything comes to an end. But what your heart tells you is, it doesn't.
Exactly.
Something keeps going. The heart keeps going, and everything's in constant decline, but we're still fucking here, and there's still like candles in the darkness, and there's still stars burning in the sky, and there's still hearts beating in people's chests. And
beautiful.
Even though it does require a constant investment of energy, and even though the whole universe is moving towards entropic, homogeneous silence, possibly it doesn't get there. It doesn't get there. People keep making music. People keep banging on drums. People keep singing songs. People keep living. And I think, that's gorgeous. And I think the silence can be terrifying because it faces it at the void, or like you said, it can be really holding and lovely because it allows you to experience and pay attention to all those like little candles that people light, all those little things that our bodies do to keep us going. And
you got me, bastard. You got me. I cry all the time now. You can't fucking do this shit to me. No, it was beautiful. It's beautiful. And it's so true that because the head does have that. It's not like a computer, but it does have that kind of element where it's like, oh, this is a thing, and that's it's so rational.
Yeah, if things are going this direction, it'll go that way.
Yeah, but the heart just knows it's different. Like you say, it's just. I think I heard Tommy Tiernan say this once about religion, where he was just like, I don't know, but I have a deep sense everything is going to be fine, and that's kind of what it is, or is it Eckhart Tolle's like nothing that's real can ever be damaged, and nothing that can be damaged is real. Like so, in a way, like that love is eternal, but your head can't. It literally cannot comprehend. So you have to go to the heart. I fucking nailed it there. Yeah, there was to make a bit of to step down from that because I can't live at this intensity at this moment in time. I also didn't sleep. But there was a funny one where I fucking eons ago I saw an interview with fucking Jerry Seinfeld with Ellen DeGeneres, people who I don't necessarily think I should listen to. But, well, he actually sometimes does some, but anyway. But she said something like, well, you can't love your children equally. That just cannot be the case. And him as a father was just like, but that's not, it has nothing to do with rationality. And that was actually the same thing as what you were saying, that she thought, as she didn't have that experience, she thought like, wait, it can't. You have to prefer one over the other. And it's like, there's nothing to do with rationality. Yeah. Of course I love them equally. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But, no, well put, brother. And I think sayonara.
I think so. I think we can leave it there, you know.
Us for now. It was brilliant. It was a beautiful season, and
it was great.
And I love that we're honest enough to go, now we need to recharge. Yeah. So because the machine in a way wants you to go, no, you have to have output that's very consistent and blah blah blah. And sure, that would be great because I love people being able to rely on us in a way. Yeah. But I think people will prefer us being true to ourselves rather than becoming an algorithmically perfect thing.
And you know, the thing about seasons is it allows you to take a break and recharge and want to figure out what we were going to do with the next season. We had a gently broad theme for this season, which was the season 2, the season of woo.
Well, we managed that anyway.
Yeah. So it'd be nice to see if there was just like some things to bring into season 3. And to be honest, that's something for me. And doing this episode was part of that as well. I was like, I like to try new things, you know. This is all a bit of an experiment for us, you know. So we're going to keep trying things, and that takes a bit more energy than just showing up every week, but it also gives more energy as well. So we will, like I've recommended people do with their New Year's resolutions, we will come back when the spring is here. When
spring is sprung.
That's it. We won't be gone too long, sometime in probably February.
Well, don't say it. I don't know. Let's see how we are and how you are. And
but we'll be back with the spring, and we'll be back we have a few guests lined up already, and we have a couple of ideas, and we're gonna keep at it. So it was a really fun season, this one.
Yeah. Lots of beautiful moments, and people interacted also beautifully with it, which was cool. I do think, like, there's a part of me that sometimes thinks, if it just was the showing up and doing a thing that's fun and that's appreciated, great. Like, it's like if you have a sitcom that you like or something, you know, it's like there is real value in something just being there and you know kind of what it is. But I suppose that's just not how we work. We just want we want to go deep, and for able to go deep, you can't do it on autopilot.
No, and you have to build capacity.
Yeah,
as well.
That's it too. Yeah.
You know, if you're going to be holding things like this, I think that's something we're both aware of. That we have to. There's some things we can hold, and there's some things we can't hold, and there's some things we can't hold right now, but might be able to hold in 6 months.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
You know, so because we're changing as well, Bart. So.
Oh fuck yeah.
That's all part of it.
Yes.
So to all of our listeners, to all of our wonderful guests, to all of the supporters out there and within our circle, you know, to our families and our pets and everyone, we shall temporarily return to silence. We will see you all soon.
Slán. Blarney gave us a big snore right at the very end.
This has been Season 2 of the Weshtern Philosophy Podcast. Thanks to everyone for all your support. Keep an eye on our socials to know what we're up to. We'll be back in the spring with more topics, more guests, more crack, and more music. Slán.